Reverend Pat up and just sit with bated breath until she kind of leads us to knowing Reverend Pat.
Thank you. Well, one of the things that I really find useful about this teaching, about this philosophy, is that there's a focus on taking personal responsibility. How wonderful is that? Don't we love to take personal responsibility? Come on. I'm sure we all love it. That's why we're here, right? So I think we show up on Sunday mornings because we're looking for some ideas. We're looking for some suggestions to help us uncover and discover new ways to support us on our journey. So are you a carrot, an egg, or a coffee bean? So I'm going to just start off with a little story. So there was a young woman, and she went to her grandmother. I'm just pointing to the young woman and the grandmother here. And she was saying to her grandmother, "Oh, my life is so terrible. Things are so hard. I don't know what to do. I just want to give up." She was really tired of always fighting and struggling. It seemed that as soon as she solved one problem, sure enough, another one showed up. So her grandmother took her to the kitchen. She filled up 3 pots with boiling water. She turned the stove on, got them to a real rolling boil, and in one pot she put carrots, the other pot she put eggs, and in the other pot she put ground coffee beans. And then she just left them to boil. And she waited about 20 minutes or so. Then she turned off the burners. She took the carrots out, put them in a bowl. She took the eggs out and put them in a bowl. And then she took the coffee and poured it into a cup. And then she turned to her to her granddaughter, and she said, "What do you see?" So the granddaughter, being very wise, said, "I see carrots, eggs, and coffee." So she brought her over a little closer and she said, "Touch the carrots." And when the granddaughter touched the carrots, she noticed how soft they were. Then she asked her to take one of the eggs and to crack the shell on it and to peel the shell back. And then she noticed that it was a hard-boiled egg. And then finally, she asked her to take a sip of the coffee. And the granddaughter did that willingly. And after she finished that sip of coffee, she said, "Well, what does it all mean, grandmother?" So the grandmother explained that each of these 3 things had faced the same adversity: boiling water. But each of them reacted differently. The carrot started off really strong, resilient, unrelenting, but when it was plunged into the boiling water, it softened and became weak. The egg started off very fragile, a thin outer shell, but when it was plunged into the boiling water, it became hardened on the inside. The coffee beans, however, were very unique. And when they were plunged into the boiling water, they actually changed the water. So she asked her granddaughter, "Which one are you? Who are you when adversity knocks at your door? How do you respond? Are you a carrot? Are you an egg? Or a coffee bean? Which one am I? Am I the carrot that seems strong, but then when pain and adversity shows up in my life, I wilt and become soft and lose my strength? Am I the egg that starts off with a malleable heart, but changes with the heat? I become hardened and stiff. On the outside, I might look the same, but on the inside, I'm bitter. Or am I like the coffee bean? A ground coffee bean that actually changes the water, changes the very circumstance that brings the pain. When the water gets hot, the coffee releases its fragrance and its flavor. If you're like the coffee bean, when things are at their worst, do you get better and change the situation around you? How do you handle adversity? Are you changed by your surroundings? Do you bring life and flavor to them? I think that all of us are here today because we're on a journey. We're on a journey of personal growth, of understanding, of acceptance, of developing, of evolving. So let's face it, situations like illness or injury, the death of a loved one, the loss of a job, the unexpected breakup of a relationship, are all things that many of us face. I certainly have experienced all of these. So I just ask you to consider how differently the carrot, the egg, and the coffee are affected by that extreme adversity of being boiled. Like a carrot, adversity can soften us. We can emerge out more flexible, understanding, compassionate, perhaps a little grateful, or maybe we just turn to mush. Like the egg, adversity can make us harder, stronger, tougher, wiser, or perhaps a bit cynical, a bit callous, pessimistic. We might just shut right down. Or like the coffee bean, adversity can be an opportunity to transform our lives into something better. Sometimes the first response when adversity shows up is just to get out of the hot water. That seems to make a lot of sense to me. But do you ever run a situation over and over and over and over again in your mind? I certainly do. And when I find myself doing that, when I notice myself doing that, I always think of Thomas Troward, who was a great influence on Ernest Holmes. And one of his sayings that I love so much is that life is not bound by precedent. Life is full of adversity. We can be squashed by it, we can allow it to make us hard, or we can make the best of it. Adversity, or what I now call opportunity, has opened my eyes. It's tested my strength, tested my beliefs, my faith, my ability to trust that there is a power for good in the universe and I can use it. Ernest Holmes, who was a man of many, many words, had this to say: humankind does not face an internal struggle against some external force that desires our downfall. The only struggle, the only battle, the only thing that needs to be overcome is our own ignorance, our own lack of awareness and recognition of the beneficent, power and creativity that is the source of all things. And we should never doubt the validity of our own considered judgment in such matters. There are no prophets other than the wise. Amidst the din and the uproar of our lives, the accumulated fear, doubt, and confusion of all ages, there has always been and always will be a still, small voice within that seeks to proclaim itself through us. Life has given us all we could ever desire. It is up to us to decide and to discover for ourselves what the nature of life is and accept it. Adversity shows up in our lives. Perhaps it's one of the most powerful ways that we learn and grow. Often, this is a time in our life when we need people to help us, to support us. It's time to pick up that 1,000-pound phone and call someone. It's an opportunity to ask for a prayer, take a class, have a session with a practitioner. Difficulties in our lives, they seem to come and go. But imagine that you are like the coffee bean, providing pleasure to billions of people who drink it. After all, Tim Hortons, Starbucks, and all the local coffee shops certainly have figured that out. I know for myself, I've been a carrot, an egg, and yeah, every once in a while, coffee. Something can be done with each of these things. But I'd like to remind you what the grandmother was communicating to her granddaughter. You can soften, you can harden, or change your surroundings, or you can be changed by them. Today's simple story tells us that getting into hot water will change you. It's our personal responsibility to pay attention to how it is changing us. Do we soften and become much like a carrot? Do we appear unaffected but become hardened like the egg? Or do we change like water when the coffee is introduced to it? The coffee changed the state of the water. It developed into something different. It evolved. The message in today's story is that it's not the experience that matters. What matters is how I interpret and react to the experience. We all have life experiences. The experiences are neutral. They have no meaning. It is how we interpret the experience that gives them meaning. Does that sound familiar? I know that in my life, my interpretation of my experience has certainly shaped my beliefs and has certainly influenced the way that I react or respond in life. The grandmother in the story suggests that when you can't change the circumstances, you can still change yourself. Many, many times I just react so quickly, I don't even know that I've had a reaction. It just happens like that fast. So for instance, imagine that you're just walking along and somebody bumps into you. Well, the event of someone bumping into you is neutral. It doesn't have any meaning. But where does my mind go? What am I thinking about when somebody bumps into me? Maybe I feel like I'm invisible. That someone deliberately bumped into me and I'm getting pushed around all of my life. Maybe it's the sidewalk's fault. Like, who designed these sidewalks? Or maybe I should have just been paying attention and watching where I was going, so it must be my fault. Or maybe the person that bumped into me is actually flirting with me. It's my interpretation of someone bumping into me that gives its meaning, that shapes the perception of the experience. Life is filled with adversity. Sometimes some things are small, like people bumping into you, or sometimes it's something big, like the loss of a love. We can be squashed by it, we can allow it to make us hard, or we can make the best of it. One of the things about adversity is that it has the ability to introduce us to ourselves. Difficult times can create an opportunity for self-examination, for self-discovery. They can present an opportunity where I may choose to hide, where I could build walls, close my eyes, run away, just find some way of escaping reality. There's a story that motivational speaker Tony Robbins often tells about two victims of chance. One won the lottery, and the other one was paralyzed in an accident. 3 years later, the guy that was paralyzed is far happier than the guy that won the lottery. The suggestion, when he tells the story, is that the guy that won the lottery was looking outside of himself to find things that would fulfill his life, that would make him feel happy. Whereas the guy that was paralyzed had no choice. He was like in his chair. He had to do some self-reflection. And it gave him an opportunity to rise to challenges that he never ever thought that he would be able to face. It allowed him to appreciate all of the good things in his life that he never even recognized before. You've probably heard the saying, when the student is ready, the teacher will appear. Well, I'd like to suggest today that when adversity shows up in your life, the teacher will come whether the student is ready or not. Emmett Fox had this to say: "It is the law that any difficulties that come to you at any time, no matter what they are, must be exactly what you need most at the moment, to enable you to take the next step forward by overcoming them. The only real misfortune, the only real tragedy, comes when we suffer without learning the lesson." Adversity can open doors to new opportunities. Most of us are taught, however, even as early as kindergarten, that mistakes are bad. How often have you heard in your lifetime, don't make a mistake? Well, the reality for me is that sometimes I learn by making mistakes. Is it possible that good things could come from mistakes? Back in the 1870s, a worker at Procter & Gamble forgot to turn off a machine that was mixing soap. So to cover up what he did, he just packaged up the soap and sent it off. And shortly thereafter, the company was getting flooded with letters. And people were asking for more of that soap. And that's the story of how the creation of Irish soap came about. Back in 1915, there was the Alabama cotton crop was devastated by weevils. But scientist George Washington Carver suggested that they plant peanuts. So instead, he saw that the crop failure was not a disaster, but actually an opportunity for change. Adversity helps us to write our life story. Any golfers in the room? I know there's one there. There's another one there. Another one back there. So the thing about golf, right, that I don't really get, is that apparently the object of golf is to play the least amount of golf. Is that not true, golfers? Right? Yeah. So we've probably all heard of Jack Nicklaus. Even though I'm not a sports person, I have heard of Jack Nicklaus. So back in 1982, he narrowly lost the U.S. Open. And people thought that that was the end of the legend, that he was too old, he was never going to win another tournament. But 4 years later, he went on to victory to win the Masters. So we're not permanently carrots or eggs or coffee. Perhaps you've responded as an egg before. Perhaps you're feeling a bit carroty. No matter what we're feeling, we all have the ability to change. And this brings me to the subject of resilience. I believe that ultimately, all we really want to do is that we just want to be happy. We want to have feelings of joy, of love, of peace. And we seek many diverse ways to achieve this. But these desires are universal, and they're at the foundation of so many philosophies and so many religions. And that's one of the reasons why I really enjoy every Sunday how we do the candle lighting ceremony to honor all of those paths. So if life is supposed to be full of joy and love and peace, why does it seem so challenging, so chaotic, so downright difficult at times? Well, there is no simple answer to that. We've been taught from a very young age, and our society and our culture reinforces it, that what we're supposed to do is strive to accumulate and achieve and control all of the outer conditions. And then we're going to be happy. Once we get all of that stuff, once we have that job, have that perfect relationship, have the perfect dog, whatever the case might be, then we're going to be happy. But what actually ends up happening is that we are running around, stressed out, jumping at and reaching for all of this stuff to make us feel good. One of the interesting dynamics of adversity is that sometimes people are like carrots, and they look strong, they look firm, they look solid, but as soon as they experience some difficulty in their life, they lose their strength, they wilt. Or others who look like they're very fragile, they're like eggs and they can break at any moment. Actually, when adversity shows up in their life, that's when they find the strength. That's when they become stiff with their armor. They're able to make it through a situation by being like a hard-boiled egg. What's true about the story in the carrot, the egg, and the coffee is that our ability to respond to conditions like coffee beans is an opportunity for us to shift our attitude. The coffee beans aren't coerced. They aren't being forced to change. They just blend. They just blend in with the water and they're transformed. Often we look for ways of trying to change ourselves by looking outside. But really, the answer is inside each of us. Science of mind teaches that we are our own inner wellspring of knowledge. that the control we are seeking is within us, not external to us. Honing our resilience summons us to a place where we can reflect and shift our perception. It allows us to strengthen our core so that when circumstances appear out of our control or seem to blindside us, we're not only able to survive it, but in the whole process, we actually transform ourselves and therefore life itself. We learn in very personal ways that our state of joy, of ease, of peace, of grace, of love, of happiness is not dependent on things that are outside of us. Not saying that we shouldn't have some of those nice things, right? Because we all like to have nice things. But that our resiliency, our ability to face adversity in our life is not dependent upon stuff. So I invite you to contemplate the analogy of carrots, eggs, and coffee, and just to notice, without judging yourself too harshly, because I don't know about you guys, but I have this committee in my head that's really, really hard on me. And just to take the opportunity, to take a moment to ask yourself, how do I respond? How do I react when adversity shows up in my life? Adversity is an opportunity. It's an opportunity to really define the person that we are. So I invite you, when facing adversity, to use it as an opportunity to build those spiritual muscles, to use it as an opportunity to grow, to learn, to evolve, and to be kind to yourself when you're doing that. Not to get too upset because you didn't have the right response. Oh my goodness, I should have been coffee, and there I was being an egg again. Or there I was being coffee, and I should have been a carrot. Like, don't get all in a knot about all of that. Like, because however you respond, just love yourself for that. Have some compassion for yourself for that. Remember that life is like flying an airplane. The pilots that are flying those planes that we get in, right? Most of the time, they're hardly ever on course. They're always adjusting. They're always making corrections. Right? But they always get to wherever it is we're going. But the trip there takes a little bit of maneuvering. So I invite you to take some time to journal, to pray, to meditate, take a class, make an appointment to see one of the practitioners, to just take a moment, to take a breath, and to ask yourself, am I a carrot, an egg,